Podnominał cast. Lek na kolarski ból dupy. Dawkowanie. Raz na jakiś czas. Tematyka. Rowery, bajery, ogóry, grand tury, waty, laktaty. W razie wątpliwości skonsultuj się ze swoim influencerem lub cyklomavenem. Słuchasz na własną odpowiedzialność.
And exactly, this is our podcast, which is, as you all know, the medicine for cycling butt hurt. And if it's medicine, then it has to be administered by a qualified personnel. That would be me, the self-proclaimed pseudo-professor of cycling, Piotr Clean. And today we have another episode. Well, hopefully you can hear that it's in English. Fake it till you make it. I'm trying. With another pro, well, an ex-pro this time round. So we have Norman Alvis today. Hi, Norm.
Hi, Peter. How are you?
Well, I'm sure I'm better than you because you've just finished your hour. So first of all, tell us how close to Eddie you got and how did it, feel? Because everybody says it's so easy to go to altitude and do the hour. So what are your thoughts on that?
No, it's the hour is never easy, right? It's maybe a little bit. Easy is not even the word. Maybe it's really controlled in the first 20 or 30 minutes. It doesn't seem so bad, but that's not the part that matters. It's the last 30, the last 20, the last 15, the last 10 minutes. That's the part that matters.
And I know that it's not your first, because I might jump to your previous life almost, so the pro life. But first of all, it's not your first hour attempt. So you tell us a bit about how many of those hours have you ridden and what were those hours? Because you have the pro ones, you have the masters ones. So what's your relationship with the hour?
The first hour attempt I did was in 1997. And so that was at the end of my pro career. I did that in Colorado Springs. And at that time, Colorado Springs was an outdoor track. So I would like to introduce this idea that I have the all-time best hour performance outdoor.
And what was it? Come on.
51,505.
So there you go. So it's always good to mention.
So that was that one in 1997. Then I attempted again twice in 2017 in Colorado Springs, but that indoor by then for the Masters. That time it was Masters 50-54, and one was 48, and then the next one was 49.3 a few months later, where I had better training.
And now, what about today? Because you've just finished it.
Today, so I'm in the category of 55 to 59, and I did 49.387, which is 4 meters more than I did 4 years ago.
At that pace, when you're going to be really on top of that 105 plus record of Marchand. So.
I'm going to catch Boardman in 21:13.
So that's all good. But when you mentioned that you've done your hour in 1997, so what was the difference in the technology? Because I'm on the engineering side, so I'm really interested in the kind of the bike prep. All those kind of small details. So what are the changes that you see within those last 20 few years?
It's mostly with positioning. And so this year I had Porrick McGlynn, who does the work for Trek, the Trek Segafredo team, but he has a shop down in Scottsdale, Arizona, Cyclologic. And I went down there and worked with him to improve my position quite a bit. And so it improved it for my power output and for my CDA. So that made a big difference. Unfortunately, in this year, I was unable to ride a velodrome until I got here. Because I live in Colorado Springs, probably 4 blocks, less than a kilometer from the velodrome, but it was closed the entire year. So.
Oh yeah, we have the same story in Poland. So
right.
It's you get here just to get some time on the track. So you say the hour 50, because we just had a chat before I started recording that you cannot catch Eddie Merckx, but you kind of did already, 51 and a half. So that's already done.
No, it's funny. So the thing that I find interesting about that and why I bring up Eddie Merckx is that in 97, you know, there's different positions and stuff. And so it was in the 90s, it was a little bit weird, right? But now, as an old guy with all this equipment and all these advantages, I find it amazing that I still can't catch him. And I'm only 100 meters from him. I mean, we're on the same lap maybe, but that bastard is up there on an old-fashioned bike with those tiny rims, you know, not even a deep dish rim and spokes. And he's ahead of me.
That, you know, the fun story is that two fun stories linked with that record. So first of all, they were doing the drilling bit. So they were like drilling all the bits to make it lighter because they didn't think about aero whatsoever. They thought, okay, if we can make it 100 grams lighter, it's going to be great. And it was just, so he was riding a Swiss cheese bike.
Yes.
Plus he attacked like the 5 kilometer, 10 kilometer record. He beat it and then he got into a pace for the hour. So it's just like, it's crazy what kind of watts he was pushing, you know.
No, it is crazy, but you bring up those things and that's the technology that has improved, right?
Yeah.
One, understanding the body's energy systems and the impact on pacing, right? Because he did the worst you could do, right? He ramped up the lactic acid in the first kilometer.
Yes.
And then he pushed through it. But that's what he was like, right? That's why he was the cannibal, right? Just so determined and so driven. So it's impressive.
But now, so as we are talking about Eddie Merckx, I have to ask you, because I know that you've ridden with him. So the question is that everybody's going to ask, did you drop Eddie Merckx?
So Eddie Merckx was a sponsor of the various professional teams, 7-Eleven, Motorola, that I rode for. And a lot of people wanted to ride with him so they could say that they dropped him. But no, I chose not to. He's a wonderful man. And I was respectful because, it's basically an honor to ride with someone like that. How many people get to ride with Eddie Merckx, you know, even if it's not competition? And so I was satisfied with that.
So talking about your, you said Motorola time. So could you tell us a bit more about that? So did you race mainly in US? Did you go to Europe, do some races? Because that I would imagine was a kind of a 50-50 split between your calendar.
No, I chose to move to Europe at the beginning of that career. So the first year, I was a stagiaire, right? So it started in August or something like that with a tour of Belgium. And it might have been 89. I don't remember exactly. But I do remember Sean Yates won that tour, and that guy was so strong. That race, it was really impressive to ride with him. But no, I moved to France, and I just made it my home. A little town called Bonneville, between Cluse and Geneva, or Chamonix and Geneva, just a small town along the route there. And I lived there year round for the 5 years that I rode for 7-Eleven and Motorola as a pro.
So now, if you were to kind of give us a highlight of your European cycling career, so what would that be?
Oh gosh, the first year there, Steve Bauer had the yellow jersey. So that was on 7-Eleven. He had the yellow jersey in the tour for maybe 10 days. And so riding for the yellow jersey, that was absolutely a highlight. Other things, participating in the tour and the Giro, also highlights. I did win a race. Oh, here's one. One of the races that I won, and I had the leader's jersey for until the last day. But I don't know if this is going to be too detailed, but so my teammate that year, one of the teammates was John Tomac, right? And John Tomac is like one of the grandfathers of mountain biking.
Yeah.
He was also an aficionado of Grand Prix motorcycle racing. And so in this race that I won, I was in a breakaway with 3 guys, me and 2 other guys. And we were coming into the finishing town where we had 1 lap to go, but it was on a really narrow road in a field. And I made one of the sharp corners. We didn't realize it was as sharp as it was. I made the corner and they both crashed. And so John Tomac said, damn, I've always wanted to win a race like that, because that's like the GP motor racer Kevin Schwantz. He was so good in the corners, other people would crash. And so they crashed. I won solo. And so that was my victory, and Tomac was jealous of it because I schwantzed the other guys.
That's nice. And as we are talking about as well, mentioning the technology, because you've seen all the technological advances, because 89, and then when you go through all that down tube shifting, I would imagine something that for us is just like something that you can ride on like those vintage races or whatever people do now. But you told me a story about the Olympic Games and the advantage that you didn't really use with the US team.
That's one of the saddest anecdotes of my life, I have to say. And so I went to the Olympics in 1988, and we were the only team, because the aero bars, they were developed, in the U.S., and we were the only team. And I did the team time trial, 100 Ks, right? The only team that had aero bars, and they were goofy. They were like bullhorn bars that one piece that went up to the extensions as well.
Similar to Le Mans, I would imagine.
A little bit, but we didn't have the normal. We didn't have the normal road bar and then the attachment. Okay. We just had a single bar, and so it looked like a tuning fork.
Okay.
Actually, and the you look back at this and you say it's like the stupidest thing ever, because what we did not have were armrests, and so we rested our arms on a round bar, and they did extra tape, but it didn't make any difference because it was just such a
small surface,
a small surface area. So consequently, we all had those bars, but we were sitting up higher because we were trying not to put so much pressure on our arms because, we had bruises from training on them. So, here we are. We have the biggest advantage you could imagine, right? That had to be a gold medal advantage. And we got 10th place. And so it's terribly disappointing. I almost hate telling that story. But it's an interesting anecdote, especially for someone like you as an engineer, right? Yeah. There's the engineering and then there's the application. And we missed a piece. Yeah, but it's a critical piece, eh?
Oh yes, resting the arms is always good when you're going full blast.
Yeah.
And so after that, so you finished your career with an hour attempt, and now where did you go afterwards? So did you go straight into masters racing, or did you just needed a bit of just cooling down from the whole spinning your legs one way round?
No, it was a little bit different than that. It was a really challenging time, right? Because I both moved back from France, and then I finished my career, but I didn't want to be a director because I had children and I didn't want to travel that much. So I went back to school, and then that took 3 years to get through school, start a brand new career, and start at the very bottom. So it was a struggle for many years. And for that reason, I wasn't racing as a masters. I didn't have time or money.
but now you're back. I know that now you're
right. And so eventually, kids get older and they don't need as much attention. And then, my career matured some, and so I had a little bit of money. And this is funny, I remember it was probably 7 years ago. I walked into a bike shop at the end of the season, and they had something. I think it was a Specialized Venge, an early version. On clearance. It was my size. And my wife says, well, go ahead and get it. And I was like, are you kidding? Wow. And I felt like a child on that bike because this was a carbon bike, high-end carbon bike, and the last thing I rode was steel.
Oh, yeah.
Or maybe titanium, maybe. But it's so different. And it was just like, oh, man, it was rejuvenating. And so it rekindled the love of the bicycle, and that's when I started getting back into masters racing.
So it's only hours that you do, or is it you're kind of targeting some track championships, nationals, worlds, or you're more of a crit guy, road guy, time trial guy? What's the story here?
So initially, as I got back into masters racing. The technology was interesting, but the racing was so much more fun. And it's because when I was a pro and an amateur, I was a time trialist, and then I was also the lead-out guy. I had a lot of capacity, and so I could ride at the front for a long time, but I could also ride really, really good for the last 2 laps of a criterium. So I was the lead-out man for a lot of my career. And as I became a master, I was the field sprinter. And it's hard to describe how thrilling it was to be in a race, and then I got to be the sprinter. And even though I didn't have teammates to lead me out or anything, I got to be the sprinter and say, no, I don't care. I'm not going to pull. I'll wait for the sprint. And then to, have my sprint planned out, go from the last corner or whatever, where I wanted to be first through the corner, and then win a sprint. Are you kidding? I never did that as a pro. I didn't even do it as an amateur. I always rode away from people to win a race, right? And so to win a field sprint, oh man, that was such a special feeling. And well, that was the joy too. I just absolutely loved it. Are you kidding me? I get to do nothing the whole race and then sprint 10 seconds of work. This is it.
So it sounds like when top sprinters, they say that sometimes the sprint changes when they get kids. So don't worry if your master's listening, because then it's also when your kids grow and just go away, you can still enjoy the sprinter's life. So that's the one looking forward. So you say that you're a field sprinter. So do you target any nationals? Because now it's COVID era, but do you target any nationals, worlds?
I think about that some, but still I have a bit too much of a job to travel that much. I would like to. We have series like Tour of America's Dairyland in Wisconsin, or I think they call it the Gateway Cup in St. Louis area, where they have a long series of races, right? That would be fun, but not yet. And then you mentioned track. And now that I have a track bike, I probably will target Masters Worlds. I would love to have a Masters World Championship jersey, so that I will probably do that.
And I would imagine it's going to be in individual pursuit or something like that.
Well, I think the easiest way to get it is team pursuit, right? Because if you're a strong guy, they say, "Hey, come with us." It's hard to get 4 good guys, right?
I'm just asking, because for me, I call those competitions like Scratch or Madison or whatever, that's just pure insanity. So I just want to make sure you're not going for Madison with one of your mates and just slinging yourself around.
Well, no, listen to this. So in the early 80s, early in my career, I did race the track in San Jose for 1 season. And my Madison partner was Paul Middlestat. And we set the record for consecutive wins in the Madison.
Okay.
He was a sprinter, and I just was strong. So I'd get up there and go full gas in the front, and he'd come down for the sprint, and I'd throw him in.
And you both were crazy, clearly.
It was a lot of fun. But to your point, at the end of that season, I got clipped in a sprint, went down and broke my collarbone, and that was unpleasant.
Okay, so it sounds really grim. So you've been, as you said, you've been in the Tour de France, you've been in Europe, you've attempted the hour, 3 times, if I'm counting correctly.
1, 2, 3. This will be 4.
Okay, so that's. Oh, sorry. Yes, you said that you've kind of switched. So you kind of went in quick succession.
Yep.
Those 2 hours. So 4 hours. So what's in store for you now? What are the plans?
What are my plans?
It's a hard question to ask 2 hours after an hour. But here we are.
I'll tell you this. I'm not afraid of doing another hour, even post this attempt. If you asked me in the first 5 minutes, I would have said, "Get out of here." But no, I think I would do that again. What I really wanted to do coming here to Aguascalientes is to see if I could match my time from when I was a pro, because the technology has changed so much, and this is such a better track.
You did match your time. I have to kind of point that out.
No, thank you. My distance, thank you. I haven't lost a second in 20 years. But no, to match my distance from a pro, I think it's possible, but I haven't ridden all year on the track and perfected some things. I had the Nocio for that anemometer to measure my CDA and perfect things. So I lost the opportunity to do that this year with COVID and the track being closed. So it's possible that I would, maybe even this year try again, because there's another trip coming in October.
That's a crazy guy.
But so if not that, then I had 4 goals, right? To set a world record today, to be the first rider over 50 years old to go over 50K, to meet my distance from when I was a pro, and then even to take back the actual record in the US, which was 53. And I had no idea what was possible, right? If you look at all the data, and if I could get my CDA down to 0.185 or something like that, and I had the perfect day here, and I had, few modifications of equipment, maybe. Well, as it turns out, I got here, on Sunday, and my first session on the track, I was bouncing between the apron and the blue line, as I was going through the corner, and I was trying to steer in there. And by today, I was able to pretty much stay in the pole lane, right? So that improved. But I'll tell you what, and I don't know what you feel about this, but I was not expecting the impact of that heat and the inability to shed that heat as I rode. And so I actually had to, at my wife's suggestion, give up the most aeroskin suit because it was too hot.
Yeah, so that's what I saw when you started as well, that you had gloves on, long sleeve, and then I was listening to what Victor Campenas was talking about his attempt here. So he even went without gloves because he said you have a lot of veins in your hands. So this is the first thing that sees the air. So basically you get a lot of cooling from that area. Plus what I also did was basically spray myself with that not dry ice, but that kind of ice that you get when you get hit. Like when you get a bruise on like playing football, soccer, whatever, and they just...
Oh, like a freeze spray.
Yeah,
okay,
freeze spray.
Yeah.
So you just go that all over your body just to feel a bit of the cold. And I started my attempt with 2 ice cubes on the back as well. So it's because every small bit,
right.
helps. So that the heat hits you. And I knew that from 2019 event in Poland, because that was similar weather. So I was starting at like 29-ish degrees, and here it was 30. So it's like those small details, like even with Campenas said, I could save watt and a half with the gloves, but I'm not going for it because I really need cooling. Those are the things where I think people also say, oh, it's easy to go to Mexico and do the hour, but it's
Well, let's correct that here. It's not easy to go to Mexico and do the hour.
Yeah, exactly. So it's it's the hour always hurts the same. So it's, as you said, it's picking the right time of the day, waiting for the good pressure as well, because the pressure, then if you have low pressure, you don't need that high of a temperature. So we were sitting like 4 guys. I never seen so many Kestrel weather monitors at one place, because everybody was just walking around and checking, it's 9:18, it's 9:20, it's 9:22, but it's 31 degrees, but it's 32 degrees. So everybody just, it almost looked like people walking around with those old cell phones, because they look a bit like a Nokia 3210. So it's,
That's funny.
So it's, it's really, you need to dial that in. So getting away a bit from the hour, because we still can kind of hear one of the coaches shouting times to one of the guys. He's the last competitor in our record.
It's the final hour of this trip, isn't it?
Final hour of this trip. But I'll just ask you, as I asked Ashton, because Ashton has got a Polish tattoo story, and I know that you have some experience with Polish coaches, Polish mechanics. So tell us a bit about what you know. What does an American guy know about Polish cycling?
Well, the introduction to Poland and cycling was from Eddie B. Borisevich, right? He was the national team coach when I was on the national team, and he was a hard man, and that's how he coached. He pushed the riders very hard.
Eggs against the wall. What he discussed. So
maybe not quite like East Germany or Russia, but very hard. And then he would always bring. They had a funny thing, right? He would bring his friends over in the summertime when they could get off work, and to be our mechanic, soigneur, driver, whatever, right? So we were around a lot of Polish guys. And that was fun, It's I like the Polish culture from the people that I've met, right? And then we also had some Stanislaw Szozda. He came over and he would coach us some. He would direct the races. He would. I don't know if you know this story about Szozda, but he had a technique of going through the final corner. Have you heard this?
No.
Oh, you haven't?
No.
Well, how crazy is that?
Well, I'm not that old. I only look that old.
No, but he's a hero, right? So anyway, he had this technique where he would make his rear wheel skip through the last corner. So kind of like a chatter. He'd do it on purpose, right? And he would throw everybody off. Coming out of the final corner, they would back off because his wheel was sliding as if he's going to crash. And then he'd hit the gas, right? Half of us tried to learn it. None of us could. None of us had, honestly, none of us had the balls to actually enact that, right? But that's what Szosda was, right? That guy was, I'm trying not to cuss here, but that guy was driven. And you could see it. When you talk to him, he get in your face and he's looking at you and he's like, come on man. He's slapping his hands together and staring at you and you're like, okay, I'll do it. So he was really, really interesting and such a personality. And then, we'd go to Europe for some of the races, the peace race or something like that. And, he would show up at those races and encourage us and coach us and tell us, you're as good as her, you can do this, and just really driven, really intense guy. So, but that's some of the Polish exposure that I've had.
So, good to see that there's Polish influence on U.S. cycling still, because as I said, we have a tattooed Roger Bannister of the cycling community, first guy to go under 4 minutes for 4K with a Polish tattoo. We've got Norman, who was trying to learn the Szosda skid. so it's good that we are there as a cycling nation. So what can I say, Norm? Thanks for that interview just after the hour. I know how you feel because I felt that yesterday. So that's thanks for your time. And what can I say? If you're crazy enough to go for it again and again and again, 4 meters every year. It's gonna
well, I'll tell you this, Peter. Next time, so next age category, I'm going to do it at the beginning of the category, not the end.
Oh yeah,
because I did 50-54. I did it when I was 54 years old, and now here 55-59. I'm doing it when I'm 58. So when it comes 60, I'm doing it when I'm 60.
Yes,
okay.
Yes, that's that.
That's that. And Peter, it's been a pleasure meeting you and getting to know you a little bit. I've really, really enjoyed our conversations, and I'm glad that you asked me to do a podcast with you.
Thanks for that, and I've learned something about cycling today.
You've learned something about Polish cycling, huh?
Exactly. So thanks for that. So thanks guys for listening. You see, we are just throwing those English podcasts at you, but that's what it is. We are the podcast pro tour, so we just need to be all over the world. So thanks to Norman, and thanks guys for listening, and speak to you soon. Bye.
Podnominał cast. Lek na kolarski ból dupy.
O Jezu, dobra, już popuszczam.